the part of you that comes up when you least expect it, the part of you that sabotages you, the part of you that delays, the part of you that overprotects or makes you shut down in those situations when you're trying to progress, when you're trying to achieve something, might not be here to destroy your life. Quite the contrary. It might be here to try to protect you from something. Once you understand this pattern, once you understand this mechanism, you can move through this and you can stop self-sabotaging. Let's start this video with drawing a simple drawing. And then we have another one here. So as you can see, we have two figures here. This one is you acting from the wound, okay? So let's write down. And this is your protective strategy. So what do these two figures mean? This is basically your past wound. So let's write it here. And this is running now. When something happens, how this self-sabotage even comes up. Let's say you are in a situation, in a reaction where your past wound that still hurts to these days gets triggered. Obviously, this is how you get triggered. You're gonna get yourself into the natural reaction, which is the strategy, which is the protective mechanism that is happening here inside of the self-sabotage. It's still running now, okay? So our bodies, our nervous system, our subconscious mind is so intelligently, beautifully designed for us to always protect us and always try to keep us away from danger. Okay, so what happens when you are trying to achieve your goals, your dreams, or anything like that? Usually you get inside of this part where the wound is still here. So the past wound gets triggered, and then our system, as this intelligent, beautiful thing that is working for us, immediately puts in the strategy to protect us from this, right? Because it is still running now, okay? This protection, this is the shield that we have, is always there, always trying to protect us, always trying to bring us back to safety. This is the part of you that gets triggered by the past wound that is still hurting, okay? This is still hurting. That gets triggered, and you immediately get into the strategy to protect yourself from this past hurt, okay? So it's still running now. This strategy is still running now. So let's say at some point, at some part of your life, something happened to you where you had to get this protection, this strategy in place, and that is still running in your system right now because the body remembers the things that happened to you, and especially things that were, let's say, deemed dangerous or unsafe. That's why this protective strategy stays in your body to protect you from the threats that perhaps doesn't even exist today, but since this strategy is still here, it's going to operate in that system until we change that, until we understand what is happening, until we understand what's going on there, and until we change that. So this is what I want to talk about in today's video, to make you understand what is happening when self-sabotage comes up and how you can navigate it, how you can reframe it, and how you can move through that differently. So I'm gonna remove this slide. Now we're going to be talking about the fear that is under the behavior, because it's very important to understand why we behave in certain way, what is underneath, and usually when we uncover the fear underneath, we understand the behavior as well. Let's write it down. Now I'm gonna draw for you 4 figures. This one tells us to hide. This one tells us to please. And we're gonna fit 2 more. Let's see how that's gonna work. This one is control. And then we have the 4th one. This one is numb. As you can see, we have these 4 figures. I'm gonna connect them with this. So let's talk about these 4 figures. The first one, the behavior here is hide. You see this figure is hiding behind a paper on their face. The fear here is that if you cannot be seen, you cannot be rejected, okay? So it is naturally resigning inside of this behavior of hiding, because it sees that seen is gonna resolve as rejection. That's why the figure is hiding here. That's what we do as well, because if we were somewhere hurt, if we were somewhere shown that if we are visible, if we are out there, we might get rejected, and that's why we reside into hiding. This is the first figure. The next one is talking about the behavior that we do is please, right? So pretty much this is like people pleasing tendencies. I'm just making the hearts red because that's fitting. The people pleasing tendencies are gonna make us please. So if we have the fear of being rejected, then we're gonna naturally people please. So this fear that could be there, that means perfect means people will stay, okay? So if we do everything perfect, if we people please, if we please the people around us, then they will stay. Okay, so what's the fear underneath this behavior of trying to control everything? If I control everything, nothing bad can happen. Control means nothing bad can happen, right? And the 4th behavior is numbing. The fear here is basically if I cannot feel anything, I cannot get hurt. No feeling means no hurt, right? So we have the behavior of hiding, pleasing, controlling, and numbing. And underneath all of these behaviors, there is a certain type of fear that we operating from. So if we are hiding, we have the fear of being seen, because we think that if we're gonna be seen, we are gonna be rejected. If the behavior is people pleasing, the fear underneath is that we're not gonna be perfect, let's say. So if we instead prove ourselves as being perfect, the people are gonna stay. They are not gonna leave. So the fear here is actually that people are gonna leave us. Then control, it has the tendency to prove to us the fear underneath that if we do not control everything, then something bad is going to happen, right? So we have the fear of not controlling everything, not having control over the situation, and then something bad is going to happen. So that's what we do instead. We try to control everything, so we have the control, quote unquote, over the situation. And then the 4th reaction, the behavior is numbing ourselves. And the fear underneath is that we're gonna get hurt if we are feeling too much. If we are feeling things, we're gonna get hurt, basically. So that means if we are not feeling anything, no feeling means no hurt. So this is all the strategies, all the behaviors that we tend to get into in order to avoid that fear that we have running underneath. And let me just tell you that all of these strategies are the protective strategies that we are doing subconsciously, consciously, not knowing about them, and yet they are only temporary. All of these behaviors All of these tactics, all of these protective mechanisms offer us only temporary fix. Okay, so this is not the long-term solution. This is only temporary fix that we get into when we are trying to deal with all these emotions and fears underneath them. Like I said, now we're going to be talking about the cost of these behaviors. The cost, what we're going to pay for this. Save now. And here we're going to be stuck later. So this is the cost that we have to pay on each of these parts of the swing. So if we want to be safe now, we can avoid, we can hide, we can control, we can numb, we can do all these tactics that we have talked about. Okay, so we can avoid, we can hide, we can control, can please, and we can numb. All of these tactics will give us the safety right now in the moment. But what is going to happen actually, that we're going to get stuck later. This is going to result in feeling unseen, resentful, and repeating. So like I was saying in the previous slide, we have these tactics, these mechanisms that are going to give us temporary fix. Let's say you put yourself in a situation where you do the people pleasing, right? You please the people around you, and in the short term you feel safe because there is no danger. You do the tactics to protect yourself from the danger, but then in the long term you're gonna feel very resentful. You're gonna feel resentful because you are doing the people pleasing tendencies. You are not being authentic to yourself. You are not doing and saying what you actually want to say. You are doing something out of the protective mechanism, and that's gonna give you this stuck feeling later. You're gonna feel very resentful. You also might feel very unseen because you are doing everything and anything to control the situation, to please the people. So most likely you're not gonna feel seen as well. You're gonna be very exhausted because you are wearing these masks every day, and you're gonna be repeating the same pattern over and over again. That's one example. Let's say you avoid the situation because you want to feel safe now. Again, it's going to show up as being stuck later because you're going to have to repeat the same situation in a different way, in a different scenario, but still you're going to have to repeat it. That's also going to result in you being resentful because you have to do the thing again and again, right? Another tactic that we use is numbing ourselves. So we are numbing ourselves in order to not feel hurt. But in the long term, this numbing, it's going to make you feel exhausted because again you have to repeat the same pattern over and over again. You are not being true to yourself, you are not being honest to yourself, you are not being authentic, and that's going to keep you stuck later. So always remember the cost of these tactics, of these behaviors, of these protective mechanisms. Because yes, at first they feel like they are doing something for us, they are keeping us away from the so-called danger, perceived danger, but in the long term, it's always going to show up as being stuck. So it's very important to understand all these behaviors, all these tactics, all this self-sabotage once kept us safe. But now, if it's keeping you stuck, that means it's not making you progress in anything. It's actually keeping you small. I'm gonna remove this. Now I want to talk to you about how this self-sabotage actually happens, okay? So the mechanics behind the self-sabotage. Like we were talking about the first slide, it all starts when the old wounds are being reactivated. So let's write down old wounds. I'm gonna try my best. So let's say here is the stick figure. that is just happy. They are going about their life, and let's say something good happens, okay? So good, something good happens. What's gonna happen now? There is the second. The body starts reading this as a threat, okay? So we see threat. So the body starts reacting. There is a lot of things happening. Not good, not good. We are not happy here because the old wound is activated. The old wound is activated here. So we are touching directly the wound here. And what happens the last? Here is the heart. That is quite literally broken and shattered because we self-sabotage. I'm gonna write it down here. We self-sabotage. So this is the process and the mechanics behind the old wounds being reactivated. Let's repeat it all. You are going normally about your day. Something very good happens to you, but what happens? You get into the state where the body reads this good thing, even when it's good thing, the body reads it as a threat, okay? So as soon as the body starts reading that as a threat, what happens next? The wound is activated as soon as the body starts reading it as a threat. The old wound start activated, and then we resolve to the last part of this cycle, which is self-sabotage, because quite literally this face is happy now. Wow, it looks kind of scary. I'm not sure about this, okay? We're gonna remove it because it was looking, especially from this angle, it was looking kind of evilish. No, never mind. So we are just happy here. Still looks kind of dodgy. We are just happy here, even though it's not good, right? Because we self-sabotage. We self-sabotage the good thing. The heart is here broken. We are still happy, but we are not happy underneath because we are going back to the old patterns and we still repeat the same thing. We do the self-sabotage. So this is the journey from good thing happening to us. The body reacts and reads it as a threat. Then the wound is activated and self-sabotage happens again. And also it is important to mention here that the wound doesn't disappear when you do this over and over again. Our system is always trying to protect us, okay? And it's always going to do it in a way that it knows that it's safe, in a way that it knows how to do it. So if something was working for you, let's say in your childhood or wherever you got into this pattern, it's still going to repeat that no matter how old you are. It's still gonna do the same cycle. So let's remove this. Now I want to explain to you this loop of the pattern that is happening. So, okay. The pattern. So here is where we are. A very small figure. Situation happens. The body reads danger. So down here, I have proof it worked. So this is proof. Here, another thing that happens from here. Here pattern returns. And again, we're going back to situation. So what is happening here in the pattern loop? Let's say this is us, right? Some situation happens to you. Good, bad, usually it's a good situation. We're going down here. The body reads the situation as danger. What happens after is resolve going into sabotage. It sabotages ourselves because it's a natural protection pattern, right? Then we repeat. We repeat the same pattern and we go back to situation, back to number one, square number one. Okay, so what is happening here? This is a very important thing that I didn't add here. So we are going right this. Situation, body reacts by reading is a danger. We sabotage. We repeat the pattern. We go back to situation. We go back. And this is very important thing that happens here. That is the proof. We prove to ourselves that it worked, okay? So the danger is here. We prove it to ourselves. We go back to sabotage. We repeat it. We go back to situation. So it is a self-perpetuating cycle. We are here and we quite literally cannot get out of it because we always repeat the same pattern. We go from situation, something good happens, danger, a threat shows up in our body. We go to self-sabotage. At the same time, we are proving to ourselves that yes, we are protecting ourselves from the danger. We are going back to repeat the same pattern and we repeat the same. And every time you repeat this pattern, you are proving to yourself, okay, so you are making this proof stronger and stronger and stronger every time you are enforcing it, reinforcing it every time you repeat this pattern. So the more times you repeat the pattern, the stronger the proof gets over and over and over again. Now we want to talk about how to break that loop. So breaking the loop. Cannot even fit it. I'm gonna put it here. Breaking the loop. So we're gonna start from here. And this is where we want to get on top of these stairs. The steps of how we can break the loop. First thing that we want to do is notice the pattern. So number one, notice the pattern, right? Number two, I'm gonna go more into details once I write this, is name it. Number three, is regulate the nervous system. And number four is choose. So you have the choice to choose differently. And when we do all of these four steps, we get here. We are quite literally breaking the loop, breaking the pattern. So this guy is free from the pattern. Let's talk about more in detail what do I mean by these steps and how we can do them. This is the first step. You start noticing the pattern, okay? So you get quite literally aware of where you are repeating the same pattern over and over again. The first step is notice that. Take a note of that. Start to be understanding like, okay, this is repeating in my situation, no matter who it is, what it is, whether it's a job, whether it's relationships, whether it's some financial situation, you always repeat the same pattern. We always tend to repeat those things. So once you start taking note of that, you want to be aware what you are repeating. Then we can start progressing to the next one. So first step, notice that. It's very important. First thing, notice that. Be aware of that. Know what you are repeating. Name is the number two. In this instance, we are actually talking about the fear that is running underneath, okay? So name the fear. So what is the fear underneath that you are operating from? As we were talking about the previous slides, for example, if you have fear of rejection, you might be doing these people-pleasing tendencies. If you have a fear of being seen, you might be trying to hide yourself. So all of these things, you can go back to the first slide where I was explaining that you want to name the fear that is underneath this protection mechanism, underneath this pattern. Once you name it, we want to go to step number 3, which is very, very important. A lot of people skip this step, but it's super important in order to move through this, is regulate your nervous system, regulate yourself. So what we want to do, because here we are operating in the level of consciousness, pretty much we are operating in our thinking brain, our consciousness, everything is logic, everything is thinking right here. First 2 steps. Number 3, we want to move this. We want to move this understanding, this awareness into our body. So we want to regulate our nervous system. So we prove to ourselves we are not in danger, okay? Because this guy is very, very afraid of getting into the danger zone, into the zone where we don't feel like we are safe, where the body starts reacting by itself because it perceives the thing as a threat, right? So we want to regulate the nervous system. And then we go and move on to step number 4. We can only do that when we do these 3 steps. So after you regulate your nervous system, you can choose. So this what it means. We choose differently. We choose not to repeat the same cycle, the same pattern, the same vicious circle. We are regulated now. We understand what it is. We are regulated in our body. We have the freedom to choose, and we choose differently. And that's how we get here. The guy who has the freedom because he does choose for himself. He doesn't choose to repeat the same patterns, the same vicious cycles, the same self-sabotage tendencies, because he chooses for himself by knowing all of these things, by going up these steps, regulating nervous system, choosing differently, choosing better option for us once we do that. Remember that choosing differently can be very, very small. It can be very small, seemingly tiny change, but if you are choosing differently for yourself, that is always gonna guide you towards where you want to go. Even that small step is gonna push you forward. Also, not to be discouraged, the pattern didn't come overnight, okay? So this protective mechanism, these things that we all have built in ourselves, which are super intelligent, trying to protect us, they have been here possibly with us throughout our whole life or majority of our life. So we have to be patient with us when we are trying to change the loop, to break the loop. And we have to give ourselves grace, and we have to offer ourselves this time and space in order to go through these steps and to choose differently and then choose the pattern, break the loop. So I want to remind you that the self-sabotage, what we talked about today and how I explained to everything, is the protective mechanism, okay? At the end of the day, anything that we do as a form of self-sabotage is essentially a form of protection, because I trust deeply that our bodies, our minds are highly, highly intelligent. Everything is working for us, right? So even if we self-sabotage ourselves, that is working in some way for us. It is trying to protect us. It is trying to keep us away from danger. So our job here is to uncover what is the fear underneath, what is the protective mechanism underneath, right? We have to notice it. We have to name it, the fear underneath. Then we regulate ourselves, and then we can choose differently, because that's how we're going to change. We cannot force our way through that. We cannot push our way, our protective mechanism away, because it's always going to work for us. We need to just be aware of what is it trying to protect us from, so we can reframe those situations and we can offer ourselves the ways that we actually desire, move towards our goals, towards our desires, and work with our body, work with our psyche, work with our subconscious mind, work with our nervous system, so it can actually propel us towards where we want to go. Because this whole system operates as a one intelligent mechanism and we just need to learn how to work with it instead of against it. So I would like to just close this video up with saying that you can imagine the self-sabotage as an old friend who is trying to help you, but he's trying to help you in a way that doesn't sit well with you anymore. It doesn't work anymore because the way is outdated. So we want to upgrade the way that they want to help us. And by doing all these steps that I just showed you and explained to you today, you can achieve that and you can work with the self-sabotage and make it work for you. So basically you can teach them a new way. You can teach your system a new way. You can teach yourself a new way. You can teach your friend a new way, okay? If we're talking about that. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.